Hello, I'm Aaron with Gartlan Injury Law. I'm glad to be here today to share with you a little bit about who we are and what we do day in and day out, and probably more importantly, why we do what we do day in and day out. I recently was given the opportunity to present at our local Houston County Bar Association meeting to a group of attorneys, again, that are members of the Houston County Bar Association over in Dothan, Alabama. And I'm always grateful for those opportunities to open up and again, share who we are and what we do day in and day out and why we do it. That's what I want to talk about today. I want to go through the presentation that I delivered, or at least a good overview of the presentation that I delivered to the Houston County Bar Association. In preparing for that, I really thought a lot about my dad and some of the things my dad taught me growing up, and some of the things that he shared with me. And one of the things I heard him say probably 1,000 times is, "Son, get a good education." Get a good education, that's something that nobody can take away from you. That goes all the way back to elementary school at Grandview Elementary School. I heard him say it when I was a student at Grandview, when I was a student at Beverly Middle School, and then again probably heard it 1,000 times or more when I was a student at Dothan High. And I got to be honest, I really didn't know what he was talking about at the time. Here's a guy that has spent so much of his life working. My dad was the epitome of blue-collar work ethic. He worked in a box factory. He worked at a brick plant, ultimately worked delivering oxygen and setting up breathing treatments with breathing care associates in Dothan. Wore a beeper uniform with the name patch. Robert Bryant, everybody called him Bob Gartlan, Bob. And so I would think to myself, what is he talking about? Well, I went to work just before my dad suffered a heart attack, and we lost him back in 1997. And just after that, I went to work in a law firm. That was again in 1997. And I've never looked back. And after all those years, all of the colleagues, all of the wonderful clients that I've had the opportunity, the people that I've had the opportunity to work with and work for, I now realize what he meant by that. I've learned so much, again, from the people that I've been around day in and day out, the wonderful clients, colleagues, family, friends. And that's what I want to share with you. And going back to another presentation that I gave recently, I was privileged to go over to the University of Alabama Law School and give a presentation to a group of lawyers at the University of Alabama Law School. And going over, getting ready for that, I was reminded of the great Bob Prince that encouraged us, and in the time that I've been honored to work with Bob on cases over the years, Bob has always encouraged us to love our clients. And so those are some things that I guess are foundational. So thinking about our clients, I could never give a presentation about Gartlan Injury Law without talking about John Randall Crawford. John was a husband, father, brother, protector. He was an Army veteran and a skilled welder. His vocation was welding. John, the last assignment John got a phone call late one night, and he had already put in a long day, already put in a shift. His sister, Sharon, took the phone call. John had the opportunity to go back out and service a plant, a facility, do some welding and maintenance work on a machine, and the ability to score some points with the company, get in some overtime, earn some much needed money to take care of his family. So John answered the call, went over, got down into the machine. This is a facility that has over 200 pieces of dangerous machinery that is controlled. There's a control room that is set up to operate that machinery. John arrived, was shown to the machine that needed the welding maintenance work. John faithfully got down in, started his work. There were some guys in the control room, the control panel, that were talking to one another and decided it would be a good idea to turn off the one of the pieces of machinery that was adjacent to the machine that John was working in, to quiet things down a little bit so they could talk more. When they did, it released pneumatic energy in the gate in the machine that John was down working in. The gate fell on John, and John didn't make it home that night to be with the family. Now, as fate would have it sometimes, or as things work out in these cases, something I've learned in representing injured workers and in being around industrial accident, death cases, work injury cases, something that I've learned: it's easy to blame the weak. It's easy to blame the dead. It's easy to blame the least of these. Something that we hear so often is operator error. And that was a similar scenario that played out in this case. When Sharon contacted me, something that stuck with me is that I'll never forget. The company took the position this was John's fault. Something that they tried to blame him for this tragedy. When Sharon reached out to me, just wanting answers, wanting to know what happened. And so I assured her that there was really no possible way that this could be his fault. And we wanted to be able to have the opportunity to get to the bottom of it and get her the answers that she deserved to find out what happened. So we filed the lawsuit, and with help from a engineering and OSHA expert, we went in, did the inspections, gathered all the records and documents, and we found out what happened. And it's an unfortunate case of profits and productivity taking precedent over safety and human life. In other words, profit over people. And I can confidently say that because of the way the litigation played out and what we learned in this case. So basically, just as an overview, in sitting here in the conference room, taking the deposition of the officials of this company under oath with the court reporter, videographer, they could give us to the penny the production. In other words, they knew without hesitation what a shift, a week, a month, a quarter, 6 months, a year. They knew their production numbers. They knew their productivity. They also, in contrast, knew what downtime cost. So they had all the financial numbers really ingrained. However, when it came to the safety, the training, the supervision, the policies, the procedures, their own policies through the litigation, we were able to access their safety manuals, their policies, their procedures, also working with the OSHA expert in relationship to safety rules and regulations. And so a couple things that were really important. In the deposition of the safety director, I brought it to her attention, ma'am, it's your position that, that this was John's fault. So I want you to tell me what went wrong, what he did, what did he do wrong since you all have taken this position? She couldn't answer that question. So I said, well, let's back up. Let me ask it another way. Here we are. You've done your investigation. You've been able to review everything. You know where we are now. So I want you to explain to me what he should have done. What should have happened to prevent this? Again, she's not able to answer because she didn't know how to safely operate and power down that dangerous machinery for safety and maintenance work. Now, this is the first time that John had worked on this particular machine. This is only the second time he had been out at this facility. And bear in mind, there's a control room that operates, that the controls and the mechanisms to operate these these over 200 pieces of dangerous machinery. Room he's got no access to. And the final steps in safely powering down, lockout, tag out, is to go into that control room. Again, a room that John had no access to go into that control room and test it. Again, to make sure that it's safe to work on. So this company had no written policy, no written procedure for how to safely power down, lock out, tag out all of the machinery for maintenance work, okay? Another issue that was there is something called a survey. They were required to have a written chart that would explain how the machinery interfaces together. Basically giving the workers up in the control room at a glance the information around, okay, if I turn off this machine, how is it going to impact the other machinery? In other words, if I turn off this machine, is it going to cause a gate to close and hurt, or worse, kill somebody, which is what happened here. So this company actually had a real deficit in their implementation of their own safety rules and regulations that were designed to prevent injuries and deaths. That there was a lack of, again, written lockout, tagout procedures, written survey, and also the training and the supervision around that. Our lawsuit was able to force them to address that along with their insurance company, to correct those issues, to prevent further injuries and deaths. It also provided a confidential settlement to take care of the family, the children that were left behind. So again, it was a commitment that we made to that family to get to the bottom of what happened and hold those accountable that were responsible. And I'm proud to say that we did that. I'm also proud of the commitment that we made to this family, that we would always honor John's legacy and the work that we do day in and day out going forward. And I'm proud to say that we've done that also. Now, this takes me to a best friend, best man, brother, husband, father. Again, another one of those calls that we've all gotten where the phone rings and just somehow you know it's not good news on the other end. Larry, Andrew, so many friends and family knew him as Red. Rabin had a local business. Part of that business, he would maintain signage and lighting at local service stations. That was part of the successful business that he built and operated. You know, he took a lot of pride in working day in and day out, as my uncle used to say, as my Uncle Larry used to say, from can to can, essentially daylight to dark. And then sometimes he would leave at dark and get home when it's dark. That was just the commitment that he had in taking care of his family. Red loved that. So that's what he was doing that day. He was at a local service station changing out some signage. What happened on the fuel pumps, he was in a All-Tech bucket, was again working on getting the signage changed out on some of the fuel pumps. In order to do that, he had to take hold of the signage and then go up, get a hold of it, and then bring it down and change it out. So in that process, he had someone there. Kevin was helping him, and Kevin was doing his part, and then he would let Red know that it was time to come down. And when it was time to come down, Red would control the bucket and come down. And for whatever reason, this, again, highly skilled technician, as John was a highly skilled welder, for these guys, the work that they do, so often, they take pride in that. That's their work rate. That's their vocation. So often that's their reputation. So the last thing that a family wants to hear is operator error. Again, especially when it's not true. So when it came time for Red to come down, for whatever reason, the lift continued to go up. Kevin ran to the inside of the van where there was another control panel and attempted to bring it down. Control panel didn't work, wasn't working. So just in a panic, he started letting air out of tires, doing anything that he could do. And ultimately, God bless him, Red was pinned into the canopy and died there while working to take care of his family. So again, the initial investigation, it's so easy to blame the weak. It's easy to blame the dead. It's easy to blame the least of these. Not surprisingly, the initial investigation said operator error. Again, it's just convenient and easy for Red to be blamed. Well, we immediately stepped in, got a lawsuit filed, took possession of the vehicle, the bucket, ultimately moved it to a storage facility where we were able to get in a engineer, forensic mechanic to go through, dissect maintenance records, service records. And ultimately, one of the things that we discovered is that some of the safety features had been overridden, which didn't allow the Kevin, so when Kevin ran in and immediately started trying to control the lift or the bucket from inside of the vehicle on that control panel inside the van, didn't work. Well, we found out some safety features had been overridden, and also that some wiring work had recently been done, and we were able to access all of the communications between the facility that did the wiring harness and wiring work and the all-tech support team. And it really gave us a lot of insight to what happened. And again, an assurance to the family that it was not operator error, along with a confidential settlement to protect his wife and son. So again, one of the things that we did there was a commitment to find out what happened and honor his legacy, honor Red's legacy in the work that we do day in and day out. And again, in thinking about John and thinking about Red, also, my dad, again, like Red, like John Randall, a guy that my dad got up and took a lot of pride in going out to work to take care of his family. And after he suffered a heart attack, I touched on the fact that he had a second heart attack when I was in law school and started working in the law firm in 1997. Well, going back to the time right after finishing Dothan High School in 91, my dad suffered a first heart attack, and then in a heartbeat, twinkling of an eye, a guy that had taken pride in getting up, going to work day in and day out, literally from the time he was 12 to 13 years old, he was not able to do that. And I saw firsthand when a guy is used to doing that, men and women, and then there's an injury and they're unable to go forward, they're literally at their weakest point. And that's so often when these company lines, these company positions, and the operator error and the tendency to blame the weak. And so it's a commitment that we have to step in and protect them in that situation. And it goes back to a conversation that I had with my dad in 1997 and carrying through to working with Red's family, working with John's family. When my dad had suffered that heart attack in 91, I wasn't able to help him. But now we're in a position with the work that we do day in and day out to help these families. So it also brings to mind a wonderful trial attorney that we recently lost to an unexpected illness, Randy Rufus Smith. Everybody called him Randy. His friends and family, his colleagues called him Randy. And I'm privileged to say that I had a great opportunity and time in working cases with Randy. Just to highlight a few that tie into what I've been talking about today. We represented a young man that was doing maintenance work on a wood splitter, and for whatever reason, the belt on the wood splitter would run, and he would have to reach into the wood splitter to perform maintenance on it, and his arm got caught in the wood splitter. Unfortunately, let me say, the safety or the cutoff was about 60 feet away. So as his arm's being pulled into the wood splitter, fortunately, there was somebody else that could hit the button, run over and hit the button to turn the machine off before it took his arm, but not before it caused permanent damage. Now, the industry standard would say that there had to be a cutoff or a safety switch in arm's length, so that he, a $20 button, a $20 switch, he would have been able to turn it off immediately. So one case that comes to mind, there's others, one in particular, and again, it's another example of profit over people and the things that can happen. We represented a nice family that had a relative in their mother that they'd just gotten to the point that the mother needed and had to have around-the-clock care. And so the decision was made that she would go into a retirement home, a nursing home, which is not an easy thing for a family to decide. And one of the children came in to find her mom laying on the floor in her room there at this nursing home. So she calls for help and tries to encourage them to get her some emergency help, maybe get her to the emergency room, call an ambulance. She just doesn't look right. Something's not right here. What's going on? She really didn't know how long her mom had been in the floor. So thankfully she was there to see about her. Well, after getting the lawsuit filed and again working with this family, letting them know that we would get to the bottom of it, find out what happened, it turns out again just another situation where there were two very simple things that are easy to correct, but it takes the time, it takes the resources, it takes the training and supervision and accountability to make sure this happens. What happened, the rail was not up on the bed. So this nice elderly lady that was there as a fall risk and because she needs to be taken care of in the twilight of her life, that's why she's there. The rail was not put up on one side of the bed, so she fell out of the bed. And when the staff got this nice lady, they got her moved over to a chair. Again, once the daughter notified them that, hey, my mom's on the floor, they got her to a chair. Well, the daughter continued to say, something's not right, she needs help. Hours later, they finally made the decision, the staff there finally made the decision to call an ambulance. They got her to the emergency room. It turns out she had suffered a broken neck as a result of the fall. Now, one other thing that went wrong, not only, again, just something as simple as the rail being up on the bed, but there was also an alarm, a buzzer mechanism where that would notify the staff if someone is no longer lying in their bed, the buzzer's going to go off. This bed, again, something that's very, very easy, very simple, very cost effective, but that bed was not equipped with that alarm system. So these are the things that we take a lot of pride in, getting answers for families and holding them accountable financially for the injuries and damages that are occurred, but it also forces them to take a look at their policies. These lawsuits force them, along with their insurance company, to take a look at the safety policies, the procedures, the training, the daily practices there. And that was a case that we were glad to work with Randy. So many others, a lot of commercial truck wreck and commercial cases where there were commercial drivers, and one that comes to mind, our client had to have a spine surgery, another client that had a shoulder surgery. Both of those were in a hand surgery. All of those were commercial wreck cases, and so often what we see in the commercial cases, drivers pushing it to make those deliveries on time, not following the rules and regulations. And again, it's important for us to address those and protect our clients. So that is the clients and cases that have made us, and the legacies we are committed to carrying on through the work that we do. And you can learn more about us, our wonderful clients, our wonderful family at GartlanInjuryLaw.com.